Alright, Total Drama Island Reboot Season 2 just came and went, so let's review it. So everyone from the previous season's cast returns to the island for a second chance at winning the $1 million prize. I'll admit, it is a little strange that this season once again takes place on the island with no new twist. As in the original series, each new season either changed the location of the competition, had a unique theme, or added something to the original formula to make each one stand out on its own. But with Season 2 of the reboot, it's basically just more of the same, which can make it difficult to distinguish it from the first. Although having the entire cast from the previous season return was a smart choice, as it gives the audience a proper chance to get to know each and every one of them better. And just like the previous season, this one is fast-paced with non-stop humor and creatively bonkers challenges. And all of these elements work just as well as they did the last time. However, there are also some noticeable improvements in some key areas that makes this season significantly more enjoyable than the last. One of these aspects in question is the elimination order. I'll admit that I may be a bit biased here, as all my personal favorite characters got to last longer, with one of them even making it all the way to the finale. Now, obviously everyone's going to have different opinions on these characters, but having the contestants I love stick around for the entire duration of the competition definitely contributed greatly to my overall enjoyment of it. Although, from a more objective standpoint, this season does a great job at eliminating the right contestants at the right time. Well, for the most part. As I've stated in my review of the first season, all of the comic relief characters were eliminated by the final 6, which hindered on the show's entertainment value during the endgame. Thankfully, in Season 2, there is a great balance of villainous players, contestants with ongoing character arcs, and comedic ones. The finalists of this season are a perfect example of this, as they feel like a throwback to the final 3 of the first season of Total Drama. One of the most notable improvements this season had over the previous one is the finale. Firstly, all the plot lines have been concluded by then, so no time was wasted on tying up loose ends. The overall challenge in each stage of it seemed to be more well thought out, as opposed to last season's, which was not only underwhelming, but also had some blatant last minute changes added in the middle. Meanwhile, this season's final challenge was far more solid. Another aspect that made this season's finale superior to the previous one is that all of the contestants got to help out the finalists of their choice, rather than just 3. As they were all utilized perfectly, and it's satisfying to see them have one more time to shine. Come to think of it, this is exactly like the finale of the first Total Drama season, which is a huge plus in my book. And finally, unlike the previous finale, the win wasn't the result of random luck. Now let's discuss each member of the cast by the order they were eliminated in. First up is Scary Girl. The main gimmick for her character this time around is that she tries to act like a normal person, hoping that it would improve her chances in the competition, only to completely fail at doing so, resulting in her coming across as even more creepy than she ever was before, which leads to her team boning her out. Personally, I'm fine with her only being in 2 episodes this season. Otherwise, her gimmick would have just gotten redundant, and she's decently entertaining when used sparingly. Chase was the second boot of this season, and thank goodness for that, as in my opinion, he overstayed his welcome in the first. He's pretty much the same egotistical douche he was last season, and while there were 1 or 2 decent jokes his character was used for, although they all involved the other contestants bouncing off of him.
Chicks, am I right?
You're never right.
But now, thanks to you, I gotta start over.
If I were you, I'd start over from birth.
It was a good thing that he was an early boot, as he could have easily gotten too annoying again in no time. Millie was thankfully the 3rd contestant eliminated this season, as there was no reason for her to make a deep run for a second time, given how boring and uninteresting her character is. During her short stay, she angered her team by getting Damien seriously injured in order to win a challenge, an action that has resulted in her receiving plenty of backlash from fans. But for me personally, it didn't really change my opinion on her. She's just as underwhelming as she was at the beginning of the series. Emma starts off decently this season, as for one, she dumps Chase once again, and thankfully, the story of their relationship ends for good. Granted, it just gets replaced with another annoying romance plot, but more on that later. Then in the second episode of this season, she goes Chase into trying to make a video over participating in the challenge, which results in his elimination. With Chase now out of the picture, this gives her the opportunity to finally develop as a character character on her own. As in the previous season, her entire personality was relegated to being Chase's on-again, off-again girlfriend. But nope, she gets eliminated a couple episodes later, and honestly, she became pretty unlikable in her elimination episode, where she refuses to help her team over a bruised ego. Next there's Nichelle, and boy, it was insane how much hype there was for her after the first episode of the season, only for it to crash and burn horribly. Now to me, her elimination last season set up two things. One, she was going to become stronger in order to be more useful in challenges, and two, she'll be a major character in the next season. Of course, the first prediction came true, with her single-handedly winning the first challenge of the season for her team, and immediately, she received a massive amount of praise from the fandom, with everyone calling her a girl boss queen. However, for me at least, the hype quickly died down in the following episodes, as her character became quite one-note. She would perform some major physical feats, and then make a jab at Hollywood for firing her, and there was little characterization for her outside of that, resulting in her coming across as underwhelming. And then there was her controversial elimination, where she quits the game after receiving a free picture deal from Hollywood, only for it to turn out to be a fake contract forged by Julia, which she did as payback for making fun of her earlier in the episode. On the one hand, with the amount of times Nichelle had mentioned Hollywood, it doesn't surprise me that the whole time, she secretly wanted her old acting career back, and her getting eliminated at that point makes sense, considering how underutilized she was, compared to the remaining contestants. However, it's still safe to say that this was a massive disappointment for the fans, who had high hopes for her. I gotta say, this season gave me a far greater appreciation for Bowie, as he is given a much more interesting conflict this time around. Initially, he continues to be an unapologetic villain, but when he helps out MK and Julia with their schemes to cheat in the challenges, it causes a rift between him and Raj, who takes a strong moral stance against it. It's engaging to watch Bowie feel conflicted. On the one hand, he's all for playing dirty if it means winning the game, but at the same time, he does feel guilty about lying to Raj, showing that he does genuinely care about his boyfriend, which makes it all the more satisfying when he finally takes his side against Julia and MK. He unfortunately does get eliminated soon afterwards, although it's perfectly fair, given that he made it all the way to the finale last time. Bowie's time on season 2 was short but sweet. Up next is Axel, and much like Nichelle, I had high hopes for her coming into this season, only to be left disappointed, as despite lasting longer this time around, she was pretty much relegated to being Ripper's girlfriend. So yeah, Axel and Ripper became a couple this season, and this storyline is focused almost exclusively on Ripper's perspective, and his antics to win her heart. We do learn something new about Axel, that being she has an artistic side to her, as she reveals that she loves poetry, and there's also a scene of her painting. However, this new aspect to her character wasn't really utilized to develop her further, but instead, it's just thrown in there, so Ripper can have a way to win her heart. So as a result, Axel still comes across as a surface level character, with little personality. And of course there's Ripper, and it's funny how in just a couple of episodes, he went from being the most hated character of the reboot cast, to suddenly receiving a bunch of praise from the fans, and all it took was giving him a love interest. To be fair though, some of his worst traits had been toned down slightly, and we do get to see a softer side to him. Granted, all of the goodwill that was given to him was immediately taken back the moment he and Axel got together, as they become one of those couples whose affection for one another is played up a lapse, with the two of them constantly making out, which makes everyone around them feel uncomfortable. While I do like some of their verbal interactions, the cringe humor that was attempted with Ripper and Axel's relationship doesn't stick the landing, which makes their relationship completely unenjoyable to watch. Ripper's elimination was also quite BS, as after Axel is voted off, she says something that implies that she's breaking up with him, and in anguish, he grabs onto her as she's being taken away by the drone of despair, and Chris decides to count that as a double elimination. While I'm glad that those two had left when they did, as at that point, their relationship had become too annoying to watch. This should have already been a double elimination round. Up next is Z, and not much has changed with him. He just continues to be Z, which is fine by me, because he is perfect the way he is.
I don't like to move through life too fast. I want to make the good times last. dude.
Never change, see? Never change. However, what I'm not too fond of is the role he plays in the Priya and Caleb romance plot, as he finds out that Caleb is only pretending to like Priya, so that he can make his alliance with her stronger, and C ends up blurting out this secret in front of everyone after their first kiss, not knowing that Caleb had since grown genuine feelings for Priya. This then leads to an incredibly forced scene, where after feeling a massive weight lifted off his shoulders from telling the truth, C starts revealing other secrets belonging to his fellow contestants, all of which he knew out of thin air. And the only reason why this scene exists is to provide a reason as to why the cast would vote him up over Caleb, in order to continue his storyline with Priya, because I guess we're supposed to believe that revealing someone's mildly embarrassing secret is worse than playing with someone's feelings for your own benefit. Spoiler alert, we don't. Oh, and Caleb being kept over far superior characters becomes a recurring theme until the end of the season. Also, I just noticed that both times C got booted, all of the remaining contestants were mad at him, and he doesn't deserve that. Hashtag justice for C. Now it's time to talk about MK, and I'm glad she had a more prominent role this season, where her potential as a villain is fully realized, and she maintains her snarky and sarcastic self from last season. Although, I really thought that she would be the endgame villain for this season, since Julia already had plenty of time in the spotlight. Oh, and speaking of Julia, her and MK as a villainous duo was a major highlight of the season, and I'll admit that I am one of the many people who ship these two. Although it seems that the writers didn't intend for the two of them to have a romantic relationship, they still had better chemistry than the two other couples that had formed during the season.
You are vicious.
Stop it. You're making me blush.
As for Damien, on the one hand, I'm extremely grateful that he got the last much longer this time, and he was still very entertaining. However, the way he was written this time around was odd. For one, it seemed like his development from his elimination episode last season was completely forgotten, which is a shame, as him gaining a new sense of confidence to compete in the show made him a perfect candidate for this season's protagonist, but he instead goes right back to being afraid of everything, which is honestly a little disappointing. Plus, for some reason, his intelligence is seldomly utilized this time around. Also, for the second time, he was completely robbed, as he was voted off just so Priya and Caleb could stay longer, and although he had an immunity idol, it got stolen by Julia. Despite all of this, Damien is still fantastic. I just wish he was treated better by the writers. Raj is pretty much in the same camp as C, as there were no major changes to his characterization this season, and it works in his favor, as he remains consistently entertaining. But what's also great is seeing more development for his relationship with Bowie, as last season, Raj was booted right after they became a couple. I've already mentioned their compelling conflict in the Bowie segment of this video, but we also get to see adorable interactions between them as a couple. Their banter in the finale was especially great, and I think that we can all agree that they were the only couple of this reboot that was actually good. And now, I reluctantly have to talk about Priya, whose character was one of the hero L's of this season. Firstly, it is ridiculous that she lasted all the way to the final four, even though she won last time. As ideally, contestants that lasted a long time in one season should get eliminated earlier the next time they compete, as it would allow the other characters who didn't get much screen time in the previous season to get a chance to be in the spotlight. After all, Millie and Bowie were finalists, who were eliminated early this season. Okay, so Priya making another deep run could have been justified if she was given a character arc, where she wants to not let her parents control her.
Sometimes I just wish my parents would let me make my own decisions, you know?
But instead, her story this season is developing a romantic relationship with Caleb, who was initially just using her for an alliance, only to end up falling for her. This is literally the exact same plot as her and Millie's friendship in season 1. And Priya and Caleb's relationship just straight up sucks. There was hardly any chemistry in their relationship, due to how generic the dialogue between them is.
I'd rather go home than cause you even one more second of heartache.
And throughout the latter half of the season, their relationship turned into a repetitive and obnoxious on-again, off-again storyline. Worst of all, so many amazing characters were booted, just to prolong this stupid plot. And of course, there's Caleb. Now I believe that Axel, Nichelle, and Damien would be the early boots of Season 1, who would become major characters this season. But I am never, in a million years, would have thought that Caleb of all people would instead be the main focus. And his character arc only proved why he wasn't protagonist material. He's just a generic, attractive, and charming guy with little to no personality, which made him boring and annoying. And even when the show tried to give him more personality traits, it somehow made him an even worse character. As during the last 2 episodes of this season, he constantly preaches about how much of a good person he is, and that he's all about honesty, even though he intentionally deceived Priya into thinking that he likes her, which makes him come across as a massive hypocrite. What makes Bowie, Julia, and MK great characters is that they own up to their villainy. But Caleb instead wants to have his cake and eat it too. Overall, he was the biggest mistake of this season. Alright, now let's talk about a character who was actually good. That being Julia. Now those of you who have seen my review of the first season would know that I wasn't the biggest fan of Julia. However, I actually ended up enjoying her character significantly more this time around. And I believe that the main difference is that there were more heroic contestants throughout the competition. First, it's easier to appreciate her villainy. Julia was an absolute force to be reckoned with, outsmarting everyone left and right. And finally, we have our winner. The man, the myth, the legend, Wayne. Now I've seen a bunch of fans act disappointed over him winning this season, since he wasn't involved in any storylines, or went through a personal arc. But for me personally, I don't care which contestant, quote unquote, played the best game, as I just root for my favorite characters to win. So I was extremely happy when Wayne was crowned the champ. Wayne was hands down the funniest contestant this season, and he's still as heroic and wholesome as ever. The one thing I would change is to have Raj get eliminated sooner, so that Wayne can have more time to shine as an individual. And it could have easily worked, as there are several scenes of him being a strong comedic character on his own. Overall, while I have a few issues with the second season of the Total Drama Island Reboot, it was still incredible. So much so that it is in my top 3 favorite seasons of the series. And that was my review of the Total Drama Island Reboot Season 2. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a like, share, and comment. Also, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notifications. And if you're interested in supporting my channel, then head over to my Patreon. Well, I got nothing else to say, so see ya.